I want to just look at the life of Jesus with you, men, and just help encourage us that when we read these things, there are so many riches. And I want to talk about this story in Mark chapter 8 of Jesus healing the blind man. There's some interesting things that happen, but I want to give you something that happened before this. Right before this, the disciples have witnessed Jesus feeding 5,000 and 4,000. They're in the boat, and Jesus is talking about the leaven of the Pharisees, and they're all of a sudden worried about whether they got bread. And Jesus says, you got hardened hearts. And he talks to the church all the time. You have eyes, but they don't see. You have ears, but they don't hear. And Jesus is trying to get a point across here to all of us that when we don't have his heart, we're going to miss the message. And he's showing them a practical story, a live story about this blind man. And this blind man comes to him, and some people lead him to Jesus, and Jesus leads the man out of town. Now that, first of all, ought to get our attention. Why did he lead him out of town? Why didn't he just heal him there? And then Jesus lays his hands on this man and prays for him, and he says, what do you see? And he says, I see men, but they look like trees. This really surprises me. Jesus praying for somebody, and they're not healed? And he prayed for him again, and then he saw. Wow, if Jesus prayed for someone twice, maybe I need to pray for someone 20 times. But what is the message? And then even more baffling in this story is Jesus says, don't go back to the village. Return to your home. I don't know about you, but I think there's some deep things here, if we just stay and meditate, that will make us think. Number one, are we blind and we've seen God's power, but yet we forget? And why did Jesus have to pray twice? You know, the disciples followed Jesus for 3 years. What were they doing? They were fishing with their boats, and Jesus came along, and they left it all to follow him. They committed 3 years of their life. They watched him die. They saw him come back. They saw the nail prints in his hands. And then Jesus kind of disappeared. You remember what Peter said? I'm going fishing. Peter, the man that walked close to Jesus, goes fishing and takes the disciples, because he says, I don't know what happened to Jesus. Going back to that worldly occupation, and who is on the shore but Jesus? It is that second encounter at the sea with the fishing that Peter's eyes are open to who God is and the call on his life. Man, I don't know about you, but some of us, there's things in our life we're just not seeing. And God is saying, open your eyes. And I pray that you'll see the wonderful message that God has for you.